idea was that of that reading was that
Can you
how
please
this.
repeat that? I'm just we're putting it into record so that the students those are not able to make today. As I'm seeing, only 23 students has able to come for this session. I'm
Okay.
putting everything on YouTube. So can you please repeat? It is all about origin of strategy by Professor Henderson.
Yes,
This
sir.
was the first reading I gave you. So
Yes, sir.
Shalini is telling us about what she observed about. Yes, Shalini, carry on.
Yeah. So basically, it is the first case is discussed of Professor G.F. Gauss of Moscow University. He is also known as the father of mathematical biology. So, in this study, he gave a principle known as the principle of competitive exclusion, in which he described that no two same species can coexist together and they cannot make their living in the identical way. So the main aim of this study was that any two species which are having identical way of living, they cannot exist together. But if they are different, then they have a unique way of advantage. So this has been passed on generation to generation, and coming from a single organism. When the single organism was developed, he was having a particular a sufficient environment, a sufficient condition in which he can survive. But as the time passed, and this living thing from a single living species, it was converted into many living species. Then came the problem of survivability, because those many species have to have the resources also and many other things for their survival. So from
Correct,
there,
correct.
this
So
competition
let
emerged.
right, right. Okay, okay. You gave the brief idea about. Ashna would like to say something. Ashna, she spoke about two things. Ashna, can you please unmute yourself and tell us about the what is your observation about the original strategy PDF? Ashna Mangai. Ashna, are you there? All right. Anyone else? Kindly unmute yourself and you can be the part of discussion.
Yes, sir.
Please. Nivedita, yes.
Yes, sir. So it was also told that the frame of reference was perfect competition, and also that before that long before competition existed, strategy existed, and it began with itself. So also about Darwin gave the theory of origin of. In contrast, Darwin also tell about the origin of species that was published in 1859. So he gave another in contrast that he think that the dispute of nature of the inhabitants with each other has to be competed in a fairly far more important elements of success.
Yeah, so correct. Yes. So let me take the idea of what Shalini discussed about all about. She talked about that this article is about Gauss principle of competitive exclusion. Where what does it mean? It means that no two species belong to same what do you call it in same category, they can coexist. What does it mean? It means that in an industry, if two companies are working alike in terms of it, their organization structure, in terms of the behavior they're doing, in terms of product they're dealing with, it will be difficult for them to coexist, right? So actually, this paper or this specific article talks about one of the experiment that Professor Gauss has done. So, anyone of you like to discuss upon that experiment? Yesterday also I have talked about that. Just to support this argument that no two organism, no two species coexist. Yeah. Anyone of you? Nidhi, you would like to say something? I request you to please don't just only get entered into this classroom, but also participate. Right? Participation is important. Who will say? Who will like to add on this? What Shalini and Nivedita has said? They talked about the basic of this paper. They talked about it was an experiment. Yes, it was an experiment by Professor Gauss, who talks about the principle of competitive exclusion, where competition leads to strategy, and competition comes first before we plan strategy. And before competition, existence matter. Like I told you people yesterday, that if you are able to exist, then only you can compete. And if you are able to compete, you can further compete and formulate a strategy for that. So it was a biological derivation of what is happening in industry these days. That we compete and we formulate a strategy later on. And before competition, we have to survive for a period. Like I took an example of startup yesterday, when a new startup has been formulated, and during the difficult time, that startup has to survive. Once it is able to survive, then only it can formulate the it will be able to compete, and it can formulate strategy for the expansion, right? So he took in this guy, this Professor Gauss. He did an experiment where he put two identical organisms into a flask with the limited resources commonly shared among these two organisms, right? And they are banking upon the common resources, like any two companies normally do if they are into oligopolistic marketplace, right? And they feed upon the common resources. So here comes the concept of existence. They fight with each other, either they compromise to each other and coexist, which is rarely possible. They actually fight with each other, and one of the fittest among them, like Nivedita said, Darwin's principle, that one among them, if there are two, for example, then one among them who is more fitter will able to survive, and one who is not able to has to quit from the market. So actually the context is that this experiment, which was a laboratory testing on biological organism, it was mere a kind of prototype of the industry, which says that if two companies work alike and feeding upon the common resources, they have to distinct with each other. They have to create a kind of a competitive edge. Then only they can survive, right? So what this Professor Gauss has observed, he observed that if two animals, two small organism, right, belongs to the same species, belong to the same industry, two companies belong to the same industry, they cannot coexist if they are feeding upon the common resources. So in that case, either they have to change their resources or they have to come out with a better strategy to survive, right? So they have to create a kind of unique selling proposition or kind of unique advantage, competitive advantage we'll call it later on, right? By creating variety in its products, by creating a kind of value proposition, or by creating core competency. We'll talk about that, right? So see, I wish to tell you about, to all of you, uh, this virtual classrooms has its own difficulty, because we can't insist you to read things, but we can only request you, right? If something has been given to you as a resource to read down, I request you to please read it. Anyhow, read it, so that for the next lecture, like I gave you this stuff yesterday, so this is your duty actually, to read this stuff. So while you're coming into the class, while sitting here for 9 to 10 a.m. in the morning, spending your precious time with us, you have to make it a quality input, right? You have to make a quality investment of time. Sparing, sitting 1 hour ideally, or just logged in and doing other things will not solve the purpose. Our purpose will be defeated, right? So we should mean it what we are doing. If we are here to study, we should actually do study. right? And rest you are all now, now you are very senior in terms of your qualification or education you're into. You're into level 3 now, and by next year you will be like more ready for the industry. So I request you to please be honest with yourself. Start reading things. If they are there as a resource to read, they mean actually. They mean it, right? So only two students. Anyone would like to add something on this? Nidhi said that in the previous lecture you had taught us no two or species cannot coexist, and survival in the market is important in strategic management. Yes, very true. So actually, the context is of an industry. What he wanted to say through his experiment, that if it's an industry where two companies are, following the same business model, they will feel difficulty in the longer run because they're feeding upon the common resources, and the common resources are common set of suppliers. They could be a common set of resources, raw material, common set of labors, right? It will be difficulty. It will be difficult because resources will be over the period of time. They will be, you know, we will have the scarcity of the resources. So resources are limited in terms of their, value. So we have to be very clear through this experiment. What we wanted to establish is, if you are working into an industry, you have to have, create a kind of differential with your competitor so that you can survive and coexist, right? So yes, let me move ahead. I'm sharing one presentation with you so that you will get more insight on this. And let me take you to that presentation. Can you see this? Can you see this, please?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
all right. So I'm just, yeah, let me make it a full screen. Imagination and logic makes strategy possible. Why we call it imagination? Because we are actually ascertaining the future. We have the plans for the future. Can you see this screen? Can you see this saying by Henderson?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes,
very
sir.
nice. So imagination is what we imagine. We imagine something which is not actually factually available to us, which is not here in today's sense. So we normally imagine, and future is an imagination. Whatever plan we have for the future for our firm is mere imagination. And in order to convert your imagination into reality, we have to create a logic for that. How to go with. Logic means how to go with. Suppose we are planning to become a multi-million company. So we are imagined that we will go for it. But how to go with that? How logical will be the proceedings? It matters a lot. So imagination is what you think, and logic is how to build, and strategy makes it possible. That imagination plus logic leads to formulation of a strategy. It's simply a kind of saying, but it has a long, it has great, insights on it. This quotation matters a lot because imagination is about what you think, and logic is how to build. And if you have the combination of these two terms, you can formulate a strategy in a very small, generic sense. Now, importantly, you people have said out of your reading, in 1934, Professor Gauss of Moscow University, known as the father of mathematical biology, published the results of a set of experiments he did on two small organisms, small animals of same species. He put them into a bottle with an adequate supply of food, with a limited supply of the food actually, right? So that they can, for a few of the days, they can survive. The experimental days, they can survive together.
Excuse me, sir, the screen is blinking too much.
Okay, okay, okay. Let me do something. Else. Is it fine now? No, it is still blinking. fix it later on, since you can see it now. You can see the screen.
Yes, sir, but it's blinking too much.
So now it is still blinking. Can you see the content clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I mean, the problem I will fix later on because time is precious. I don't want to, do what do you call it, troubleshooting on this. But you can see the screen now because I made it, in the normal mode. So focus on the content of the screen, which says that what? It says that in 1934, the professor has an experiment, and the experiment was on two organisms of the common, species. They belong to the same species. He put this organism into a bottle with the adequate supply of the food. What does it mean? Let me interpret it like this: the supply of the food, which is a resource. These two organisms typically represent two organizations, two firms, belongs to same species, means they belong to same industry. They belong to same industry. They belong to same industry. And since if they belong to same industry, what does it mean? They are competitors to each other, right? So I'm again repeating it. Just create the context out of this statement that two organisms belong to same genus, same species. What does it mean? Same species. That means two firms belongs to same industry are banking upon common supply of the food, common resources. They belong to common resource. And what that resource is all about. The resource means set of suppliers, those who provide raw material to them, to both of the firms. They could be common resources, including human resource, labors. Those are, assisting firm one and firm two, both of them. They could be common, financial resources, right? They may are sharing the common resources in terms of finance also. So now, what professor has experimented, if the animals were of different species, they could survive and persist together. If they were the same species, they can't. What does it mean? It means that since they belong to the common, industry, these two companies will invest most of its time into fighting with each other, right? Because they can't coexist. So they will actually, one of them has to perish because other one is keep attacking. I'm just referring the animation we had yesterday. There were two individuals; those are able to survive over the period of time, and uh, over the period of time they are able to survive. They jumped into from one era into another era, and they survived the previous era. But unfortunately, uh, they were actually felt difficulty when they got the common environment, because they can't coexist. They have to fight on the common resources, right? But in case if they are different to each other in terms of their species, in terms of their genus, they can coexist. Like dog and human being. If you go with the history of civilization, you can easily understand that when human being, Homo sapien, come into the earth, the most favorite individual, the most favorite species with whom Homo sapiens survived, it was pet animals, cow, dog, because they are not giving any kind of challenge to them. They're not giving any kind of competition to them. There's no matter of any coexistence, because by and large one is master and one is slave, right? One is a kind of subordinate. One is a kind of I'm just changing the context quickly. One is one of the supplier. One is a dependent. Who is the dependent? The pet is the dependent. So they can coexist. Whereas if they belongs to the common species, they are two Homo sapiens, they will fight with each other, and only one can survive, or probably neither of them can survive, right? So, can you make the context out of it? Say yes, write on the text yes, or if you're not clear, write no. Okay, right. Majority of you are saying yes, means you're getting the things. So, now, importantly, if you go with the experiment, what Gauss has said, no two species can coexist. That makes their living in the identical fashion, similar fashion. By and large, they wanted to say that what he wanted to say is, no two species coexist if they do the similar, work. They have to actually change in order to coexist. Right. Now, coming to Nivedita's point, competition exists long before strategy. Yes, very rightly said. Competition exists long before strategy. It begins with the life itself. If you go with the biological evolution of the organism in this planet Earth, uh, and if you go with the derivation, what Gauss has mentioned in this research is this paper in this Harvard Business Review article, and what Bartwal has said initially, that first one cell organism requires certain resource to maintain life. एक बेसिक रिसोर्स चाहिए हमें लाइफ को जीने के लिए. अगर वो सरवाइव कर जाता है तो वो मल्टीप्लाई करेगा अपने आप को और धीरे धीरे करके कॉलोनाइजेशन करेगा, एक इकोसिस्टम डेवलप करेगा. इकोसिस्टम डेवलप करने के बाद वो अपना एक इंडस्ट्री डेवलप करेगा. आई एम जस्ट while you're reading, putting efforts into reading this all stuff in the PPT, let me make it more simple. Like what she said is, if you're able to survive, then you start doing multiplying people like you. Those are able to understand having the synchronization with your business philosophy. Those are having a similar business philosophy that you are dealing in, right? Okay, fine. Let me take an example of two companies which are typical software developers in 1980s. They come into kind of existence. One is Microsoft and second is Sun Microsystems, right? Let me take an example. So these two companies are typical software developers, Microsoft and Sun Microsystem, right? I'm taking a real-time example to support my argument. So 1980s was a time when Microsoft was being incepted, and Bill Gates was the co-founder. And soon after, almost a span of half of the decade, 5-6 years later on down the lane, in the late 1980s, a new company was being established called as Sun Microsystem. They belong to common industry, but they don't deal in common kind of softwares. Please underline this. They don't deals into common kind of softwares, right? What does it mean? It means that Microsoft deals into graphic user interface based softwares, and therefore Sun Microsystems also. But Microsoft charged licensed money. It was a paid software. Whatever softwares Microsoft deals into, they are the paid softwares, right? Whereas in the case of Sun Microsystem, the softwares were the open source. They were the open source softwares, right? And they are free to download, free to use. You only have to pay a very small amount of money if you are using them. So there was no any conflict in terms of the product they are dealing in. So in order to coexist, what Sun Microsystem did, which was a late entrant into the market, they simply changed the way they are doing business. Instead of developing or imitating means copying. Instead of imitating the business or kind of software that Microsoft was developing, they create a kind of niche. They try to create a kind of differential. They create a variety. And then what that variety was creating softwares which are free to download, free to access, called open source softwares. So that's how they are able to differentiate with each other. If Sun Microsystem copied or imitate what Microsoft is doing, it will spoil the show. Because by and large, while you're copying someone, you can survive for a moment of time, say instant, for instance, 2 3 years. But the company to whom you're copying will have a better designing skills. They will do a kind of innovation and create a better product and make a kind of barriers so that you will not be able to copy it, make it more copyrighted, or a kind of more prohibition measures they will take care of, legal or illegal, legal or otherwise. So as a imitator, you won't be able to copy in the second phase. You can only copy the product at the initial stage. It will be a difficult situation for Sun Microsystem if they're dealing in the similar product that Microsoft was dealing into. So that's how understanding this, the concept that Gauss has said, which is the principle of what do you call it, competitive exclusion, that two companies can compete when they are excluded, mutually excluded to each other. They are not doing the same job. So Sun Microsystem has created a kind of niche, and they developed a different operating system, right, which was known as Sun Microsystem, right? It was an operating environment like Microsoft is having. And later on, a lot many of other players joined hand with Sun Microsystem, and they come out with open source community. The students, those are having a computer background or interest in computers, can understand it easily. And later on, a lot of innovation they did. They come out with Firefox, Netscape Navigator. These two browsers were kind of competitors to Microsoft Internet Explorer, and gradually become more popular in 1990s and early years of 2000, right? And later on, they invest their money or invest their skills into development of a very big open source platform, which was later on, which was the extension of Linux, which was again an open source operating system, Unix, which was an open source operating system. And they come out with more compatible operating system, which was later known as Linux, or you are better known it by the name called Android operating system. So Google took the lead of this open source community. It was being passed on by Sun Microsystem to a lot many of other players, and later on accelerated to Google. And Google become a larger platform, which is now providing open source softwares, free to download and free to use. Although they have different business model to earn money also. So coexistence, in order to coexist, they differentiated to each other in terms of the variety they are offering, in terms of marketplace they are catering, in terms of what do you call it, pricing strategy they have, right? Can you make something out of it? What I wanted to say? Say yes if you can understand. I like Navedita has a question before I ask.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Navedita, what Navedita has asked, she asked that, sir, here identical way refer to same idea of business. Yeah, it is more about same idea of business. It means that copying each other's business plan also. It is more about catering the same set of market segment. It is also about offering the same prices, which means identical in every sense, creating a parallel business, right? If you have a parallel competitor which do business like you are doing, it will be difficult for both of you to coexist. Getting my point, Navedita?
Yes, sir.
Right. So आर यू आप इत्तेफाक रखते हैं जो मैं बता रहा हूँ आप लोगों को? अभी जो मैंने गूगल वाली स्टोरी बताई है आपको, सन माइक्रो सिस्टम और माइक्रोसॉफ्ट की स्टोरी बताई है, can you make something out of it? If yes, please write yes on the check box, text box. Okay, so majority of you are agreeing on this, right? Now, let me take you to another slide, which is again talks about the other dimension of this article. Uh, what explained this evidence? It explained that if you really want to coexist, you have to create a differential. You have to create variety. You have to have more than what your competitor is offering. You must have variety in your offerings, right? So Microsoft was only offering what? Operating system. What once Sun Microsystem was offering? Sun Microsystem was offering operating environment, which was operating system by and large. But they start offering other stuffs also. They start offering training to the people those are into usage of Microsoft, Sun Microsystem software, which initially Microsoft was not dealing into. They did on-site support free of cost, of course, which Microsoft was not doing. They start doing building security softwares, right? Which Microsoft was not doing. Which Microsoft start doing at a very later stage in late 2010, 2000 and 2000 second decade, right? And they Microsoft come out with Microsoft Essential, which was a kind of intrusion detection system as an antivirus software by and large, which they did almost 3 decades later. Sun Microsystem was very clear that if they want to do this job, they want to be in the same industry that its first entrant was, the competitor was, they have to create a niche, they have to create a variety. And they did it. They create a variety. What else? It means that in order to explain this evidence, variety should be there in terms of what you're offering. You must have different variables than your competitor is offering, different product lines, right? I'll take more examples on this. Now, how you can make yourself different, how you can offer variety is important to understand. So there must be 5 major attributes you should consider while you're offering variety to your clients, to your customers, while you're strategizing the competition, right? The first thing is you should understand the behavior of the competition, right? Who are your competitors? To whom they are dealing? Who are the customers? Right? What are the source of finance? Who are the people you can, take benefit from to be your employees, the people? And what could be the common resources? So in order to create a strategic advantage or competitive advantage, right? You should have the ability to understand the behavior of the industry. Behavior of the industry. What does it mean? Behavior of the industry means competitors' behavior. It's better known as competitive behavior, which means that your behavior should be reflect in terms of your action, and you can only do action when you understand the whole industry and your competitor also. When you can understand the resources available, I can understand, what are the sources of those resources, right? What are the set of skilled people, those you can deploy as an employee in your company? What are the source of finance? Who can fund you? What could be to your customers? How and why your competitor is surviving? You should understand that. Like I told this thing as yesterday also I talked about competitive intelligence. So competitive behavior talks about understanding the environment in a nutshell. Second thing is ability to use this understanding of point first to predict how a given strategy moves will rebalance the competitive equilibrium. Now here the term comes called competitive equilibrium. What is competitive equilibrium? Any one of you? Competitive equilibrium. Anyone like to guess? Any guess? Competitive equilibrium. कौन बताएगा? अमित महंती, tell us what is competitive equilibrium?
Yes, sir. What is competitive equilibrium? So, according to me, was like competitive equilibrium has. Mm, so, according to me, it's a
Yeah, Amit, I've lost your voice. So Jayashree has said yes. Jayashree said competitive equilibrium is like some sort of balance in competition between the competitors. Navedita said competitive markets with freely determined price arrive at the equilibrium price. Okay, a bit more technical, right? So I'm going with Jayashree's comment. What Jayashree said is a equilibrium, which is a kind of balancing the competition between competitors. Yes, the balancing the competition is happened through 7 P's, right? By selecting a better place, better price, better promotion technique, right? Or it could be like what Rabani said is profit maximization among the producers and utilization of the. Okay, ठीक है, ठीक है. So now equilibrium is happening when you are having equally good arrangements, so you can move ahead strategically. Because while you're doing point number one, your competitor is also doing point number one. They're also trying to understand the competitive behavior of you. If let me take an example of two companies, A and B, you are A and your competitor is B, you want to coexist. So in that case, B is also visualizing and understanding what A is doing, right? So they are trying to rebalance themselves, adjusting themselves so that they can compete to each other, right? They are trying to adjust themselves. What that adjustment talks about, they are into a kind of, equilibrium means they are in the equal, on the equal surface, right? This equilibrium happens when somebody is having upper edge over others. It has happened because of lot many of reasons. Probably your pricing strategy is better. Probably your supply chain is more intact, right? So you as a competitor, you have to actually improvise on that so that you can, coexist and co-survive into this industry. So competitive equilibrium happens when you are able to understand, analyze the industry, your competitor, right? The resources, the people. So you keep on doing churning, right? And out of the churning, you are able to manage the show. So you keep on doing activities like, readjustment, redeployment of the human resource, right? For instance, right? Putting better human resource into your business, into your firm, mobilizing better resources, doing innovation over the period of time, right? Injecting better financial, institutions, those can offer you. Yeah, it's not about healthy competition, Archana. It is more about, surviving. And survival is important because your competitor is much ahead than you. So you have to actually do improvisation so that you can be at par with your competitor. Healthy or worse, I don't understand this, but importantly, it's more about creating your existence. If you keep on, there will be create a more gap. The gap will be much higher. So you have to readjust or rebalance yourself, right? I hope you got this point. Right. So yes, 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 correct. Let me move ahead with resources that can be permanently committed to new uses even though the benefits will be deferred. Ability to predict return and risk and return with the enough accuracy, confidence to justify that commitment, and willingness to act. Let me take them uh, individually and club them later on. So we talk about three things. First is willingness to act. What is willingness to act? Willingness to act is right. I'm ready for the change. As a player into the industry, I'm ready for any change. Right. As a company called Kotak, I'm ready for digitization. Right. If I'm ready for the new wave of technologies, I will be able to move into the next phase. If I'm not, I will be perished. And it happened with Kodak. You know that when digitization of roll camera was happened, Kodak was not agreed upon. And what happened was Kodak has been thrown out. It was not able to compete with the or in what do you call it uh, uh, absorb new changes. So that's why they lag behind. And companies like Sony, those are able to manage the show and adapted the new technology called digitization. From roll cameras, they moved into digital cameras. They survived, right? So here comes the point called as willingness to act. Willingness to act during the changes, right? And changes could be any change in the market condition because ecosystem keep on changing. I'm taking a biological example of dinosaurs. They're not able to adjust with the changes, with the change in the climatical situation of planet Earth, and lot many of other species. No, they're not able to survive with the changes. Willingness to act means willingness to change means you have to actually adaptive enough. So whenever new things will come, you have to actually adorn that, and it will be at better competitiveness or better competitive advantage over your competitor, right? Yes, Shalini said rightly, act according to the market conditions, and actually not only acting, it's more about adopting also. Like Nidhi said that yes, she's rightly said that you actually इतना tough इतना typical अंग्रेजी मत use किया करो, make it simple. It is achieved when profit and maximizing. Yes. What she intended to say is a balancing situation when you are actually balancing what without compromising the profits. You are trying to balance the show by reducing the cost, right? By offering more discounts to the customers. So any kind of tactfulness tactics you are offering so that you can create the balancing in terms of. So willingness is coming to the decisions also. Rightly said by her. Rightly said by Nidhi. Yeah. So yeah, let me go with the fourth point: ability to predict risk and return with enough accuracy. So here comes the point that nowadays predicting the potential risk is important for the companies. I hope that you are agreeing on this. Most of you are agreeing on the fact that before December 2019, none of the companies are able to understand or able to predict that there could be a deadlock situation because of COVID-19. When the companies are not able to, deadlock situation means when the companies, a kind of situation when it's like let me take an better example. Let me make you understand about what is deadlock situation. Then I refer to this example again. Suppose two trains are coming on the same track, right? On the from the opposite directions. So they will be stuck, and if they insist to move ahead, they may be crashed, right? So this is called deadlock situation, where your resources, your processes, get blocked, right? Is a bigger bottleneck. So what I was quoting about the COVID-19 situation. No, none of the companies are able to visualize in the last 6 or 7 months before that their business will be stuck because of this virus. So actually nowadays analytics plays a role, that the risk which is unforeseen, which you can't predict, should be evaluated through all possible ways, all possible thinking. Risk could be anything, like change in the market positioning, market risk, which is better known as market risk. Change in the uh, stock prices, or change in the prices in other countries, dollar versus INR, right? Which is known as currency risk, right? Financial risk because of change in the stock prices and all, or your central bank has changed its policy. Financial risk happen, or maybe your business is not having, you know, uh, not able to get adequate, working capital flows. So your money has been stuck with your suppliers or your customers. This is financial risk. So you will have to be a bit intelligent. We have to be a bit, proactive. I'm talking about the fourth point, which was more about ability to predict risk and return with more accuracy. You have to be more, accurate in terms of predicting the potential risk. Are you agreeing on this? So you have to be proactive in terms of a willingness to act. You have to also adaptive enough to understand the potential risk and return out of it, right? So you have to be very, very proactive in terms of acting for any kind of change which is happening into the ecosystem. Let me take like this. Okay, I'm putting a question in front of you. This is my last, example for today. Then we will wrap for today. Have you ever assumed that your younger brothers and sisters, or yourself also, will do your education while sitting at your place, right? While you're doing your educations, you're getting yourself skilled while sitting at your place without going to university, and universities become virtual universities, learning become online. Have you ever visualized it 5 or 6 months back? ऐसा कभी सोचा था आपने 5-6 महीने पहले? No, nobody. Yes. For an IT executive working for TCS or Infosys or any foreign project they are into, right? They never assume that they have to actually face the job cuts or have to work from home. It was not a global phenomenon at that time. Work from home was restricted. It was only for a specific profiles. But work from home become a kind of need of the art these days, right? So you readjusted, right? Yes or no? You readjusted yourself. You adapted the changes. Otherwise, अगर तुम बाहर जाओगे, Corona will it will be a problem for you. You have to maintain the social distancing. You adapted the change. So as an individual, you adapted the changes because there will be no survivability if you are not able to adjust yourself or readjust yourself. Similarly is happening with the companies. They have to be willingness to act. They have to have the willingness to act very adaptive with the changes. And before doing adoption, they have a great courage. They have great ability to predict the risk and the potential returns out of it. Right? If you're not able to, you will be lag behind. You have to suffer huge losses. I'm taking an example, and that example was a company called Cisco. Have you heard about Cisco? Cisco deals into, yes, telecommunication equipment. Very big company. They deal into, yes, very right. So they deals into equipment manufacturing. 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14 was a time when majority of companies which are into telecommunication business as a OEM, original equipment manufacturer, or telecommunication equipment manufacturers, they were churning money like anything, because majority of companies were into digitization mode. They're transforming their businesses from brick and mortar to digitization, digital business, online systems. So during the time, they need infrastructure setups, and these companies are providers to them, right? So what happened was 2009 was subprime crisis time when the U.S. economy downfall was happened, and a majority of companies are actually deferred their investment plans in America, in Europe, in other Western countries. So Cisco, based on their sales they made in 2006, 2007, 2007, 2008, 2008, 2009 financial year, they actually doubled the production of telecommunication equipments. So what they did is they actually done a wrong forecast, right? Based on the past, sales they made in last 3 financial years, they ascertain a wrong they did a wrong forecast, that if my profit margin is getting increased by two folds, 2x, then by fourth year it will be 4x. It means that हर साल 2x की ग्रोथ हो रही है, डबल ग्रोथ हो रही है, तो चौथे साल में आपका 8x हो जाएगा, तीसरे साल में 6x हो जाएगा. So they did a wrong forecasting, and they don't able to understand the potential risk of unforeseen risk, which was happened because of the deferring of investment plans by the clients. So the companies like Walmart, the companies like Kmart in UK, they deferred the investment plan. They said, no, this year we will save money, and instead of investing into IT equipments, we will defer it for the next 2 years. So all the companies were into conservation mode. I'm sorry, conservation mode. They preferred to save money and defer the investments. So do you think that the company which was able to make double fold profits, Cisco I'm talking about, because of wrong forecasting, wrong risk calculation, they have to bear $1600 million losses. So whatever product they have made, which are a technological product, different devices for the telecommunication support, they have to actually sell those devices into scrap, because by next year they can't keep the inventory, because inventory cost they have to bear, and if they keep it for the inventory, in any case, by next year the technology will be obsoleted. So this is the loss of not doing analytics, right? Analytics is nothing but analyzing the data, predicting the future, ascertaining the risk involved, and making estimation of the returns. The wrong calculations or miscalculation leads to the losses, and it happened with the companies. Majority of companies, they have to actually bear the losses because of these miscalculations. So you have to be very wise, you have to be very proactive, you have to be very competitive intelligence you have to have in yourself as a company, so that you can coexist with your big rival, big companies, big competitors. So this is all from my side for today. We will take next topic as per syllabus tomorrow, right? I will share the required resources with you in next 1 hour, so that you can read meantime to prepare yourself for tomorrow, right? So what today we have discussed, let me have a small recap. We discussed about three things. First is coexistence can't happen. If it is happening, we have to have the competitive intelligence enough. We have to understand what your competitor is doing, or all seven P's. And we have to be little innovative. We have to be little have little willingness to act, right? And all other parameters, all four parameters that Professor Gauss has discussed. We refer to biological survival. We refer to Gauss experiments on competitive exclusiveness, right? We also talked about how this thing is being contextualized into industry, how new changes, opting new technologies or changes may makes huge losses to the companies. Like I took an example of Kodak. I took an example of Microsoft and Sun Microsystems, and involvement of Android-based or Linux-based solutions, right? Yeah, I will share the recording is already being shared on the YouTube channel. Akanksha Mishra, I'm answering your question. So we keep on doing this. I will keep sharing the content before delivering a lecture one day before, so that you can read yourself. And a small submission: attendance is compulsory. Only 27 students I can see out of 40. Attendance is compulsory this time because we have to be kind of more accountable that our classes are happening on regular basis. So for attendance, as far as attendance is concerned, every day we are building attendance on Google Classroom, and the copy is being given to the school office also. So you have to be honest with yourself. If you're not attending lectures, so it will be a difficult situation for you. You will not get marks, or you will not able to sit an exam virtually or physically at a later stage. So I will appreciate if the teachers are putting their hard labor to make this class happen. And you should also ask your friends to be attentive and regular in the class, right? And I will be the first person who will stop you for sitting in the exam if your attendance is low. So please regular and read the stuff regularly, right? Take time for 15-20 minutes for daily readings, right? It's not tough. It's a matter of adoption only. If you start reading things, it will be helping you for decision making. And learn as much as you can learn from any resource you have on internet, or from other way. So all the very best. We call up for the yeah. This is all from my side. Thank you so much. For any kind of questions, you can put it on the this text box if you have question in your mind. For recording, I will share on the Google Classroom and on YouTube channel also. Thank you so much. Good day. Hare Krishna.